are we dealing with a unified Armenian diaspora, or we should entertain a different notion? I understand the question is somewhat provocative. You know, Mark, it's interesting that such a question still is a matter of a conversation. We Armenians, we date back a long time in the diaspora. We have rich diaspora traditions. The Armenian diaspora, most probably in its numbers, the spread is quite remarkable. And in order for us to be able to talk about Armenian diaspora relations, we have to start to grasp what diaspora is. We haven't done our homework yet. This is already symptomatic. If we get back to the state of the art today and look at how the sociologists define diaspora, diaspora means people who are linked in a number of ways through culture, through their activities with a country that they feel attached to. In order to be a member of the diaspora, it's not sufficient to be of ethnic Armenian origin. For a sociologist, in order to be deemed a member of the diaspora, one must actively participate in a given community's cultures turnover. You should go church Sundays, buy daily newspapers, take part in rallies. If you're passive, you're not a member of the diaspora. That's the current definition of the sociologist. Maybe someone could have Armenian parents, has an Armenian name, last name, living in Russia or Brazil, but doesn't want to have anything to do with Armenianness. That particular individual is not a member of the diaspora. Conversely, there may be someone who does not have an Armenian name or an IAN, doesn't speak Armenian, but feels himself or herself strongly to be Armenian. And if something transpires in Armenia or on April 21, this person is very actively involved. These people are members of the Armenian diaspora. Of course, the diaspora cannot fit a single mold. In its essence, diaspora is diverse. That is the richness and interest of it. So the differences, discrepancies are linguistic. You speak Western Armenian, I speak Eastern Armenian. There are bearers of both languages in the diaspora. There are Armenians in the diaspora who are Russophone and do not have any command of Armenian. And this list could go on. The diaspora, well, I already mentioned the language. There is geography, there is history, there is social, cultural, and other distinctions and differences in the diaspora. What brings them together is that they all identify as Armenians. There is this new good idea around Armenian by birth and Armenian by choice, as a result of a conscious choice. I understand that we need to have a grasp on what diaspora is, and therefore somehow rethink, reimagine, reevaluate the relations between Armenia and the diaspora. How should we do it? Well, how to begin with, we need to review our ideas. I believe that since Armenia's independence, the Armenianness and the Armenian life, the Armenian political ideology focused on Armenia and Artsakh. And in my opinion, this was a result of a certain historical period, and this was a limited approach. If we look at Armenian history, Armenian culture, Armenian political thinking, Armenia had a limited role and place in it, has had. The Armenian political thinking emerged and developed outside of historical mainland Armenia, all the way from Madras to Venice, from Amsterdam to Constantinople, from Tbilisi all the way to Cairo. And whatever transpired within this last 30 years, that is being Armenian and entertaining Armenian political thought, that they should concentrate in Armenia. This is, I think, a misconception of the Armenian history, and our rich experience gets limited and confined by Armenia. Armenia is of utmost importance, that is not the question. But outside of Armenia, there is a diverse experience of Armenianness. Ignoring this richness would be a big error, I believe. And that is how, by ignoring it, we impoverished and brought to a very poor platform the relations between Armenia and the diaspora. What I want to say is that the experience of being Armenian over history, at least within the last 10 centuries, has been extremely diverse. You cannot constrain Armenia to a nation state. If you constrain Armenianness to a nation state, apparently it would be difficult to experience Armenianness outside of Armenia. Whereas if you define Armenianness only inside Armenia, in the best case scenario, we will end up by something like Moldova, a country like Moldova. That would be the outcome. Even worse, because Moldova is a member of the European, has a border with the EU. And next to it, there is Romania. I don't know, 80% most probably of Moldova's population are Romanian citizens. They speak the same language. So what I want to say is that Armenia's potential, if we confine it to the nation state, would be very limited. It's a difficult place geographically. The Caucasus, the population is just 3 million. We do not have much to yield to the rest of the world as a nation state. You cannot surprise Hungarians or French people by anything. But if we look at our history as a pan-Armenian history, where the diaspora alongside Armenia and Karabakh has its place and significance, that is when the idea of Armenianness will be transposed to a richer platform. Let me incidentally add something. Even during the Soviet times, when the Soviet Union was almost hermetically shut from the West, we still maintained connections and links with the Western Armenians. And there was a lot of funding coming in from the West into Soviet Armenia, beginning with the AGBU and Nubar Pasha's work all the way to now. There are buildings in Yerevan that have been constructed on the expense of that funding. There is a whole community that is called Nubarashin after Nubar Pasha. All the way to the Hrazdan Stadium. There was significant fundraising significant funds transferred by Galus Gulbenkian to build it. So yes, truly, by limiting us within the notion of a nation state, we seem to pulverize even the achievements that we have had in the Soviet period. If not nation state, then what? I believe that we have a very rich and very modern network. Let's imagine that Armenianness does not have to be confined to Armenia. Let's imagine, since Armenia gained independence, more Armenians left Armenia than came to Armenia. That is our reality. By denying this, we will not resolve any issue. By denying the reality, we will limit room for our thinking. Let me quote Catholicos Aram I. During the last Armenia Diaspora Summit, is what he said, quote, Armenia shall erode as well as diaspora. So whenever hundreds of thousands of people left Armenia, that did not strengthen the diaspora. End of quote. There is a problem here. The problem is that we focus and diverted all of our attention and efforts to help Armenia. We could talk about this help later. Instead of imagining ourselves as a global network. The center, the hub of this network is Armenia, Yerevan, but you have to think of it as a network. When the world already embarked on the period of globalization, we were already there. Not only did we have it, we had hundreds of years of experience of such a network. So how come that 50, 100 years ago in the 18th, 19th century, we were capable of such a global Armenian network and taking advantage of it? And taking advantage of it, we were more progressive than the empires that hosted us. Armenians were more advanced and developed than an average Ottoman or an average Persian or an average Russian. We had that network. There is one more thing here. Is Armenia ready today to become the hub of this network? Or do we keep on treating diaspora as a, I apologize, as a milch cow that you need to siphon off funds off all the way, and that would be the end of it? That's not the way to do it. You can do that, and we see the result today. They're apparent. When we look at the last 30 years of relations between Armenia and diaspora, the first idea was that the diaspora should help Armenia. I understand this idea. There was the earthquake, there was the war, there were the refugees out of Karabakh or from Baku, so one had to help Armenia. But 1988, 1990, 95, 96, since 96, sticking to the same idea was already wrong. The second idea that's been voiced within the recent years is that the diaspora should come and invest in Armenia. This idea, once again, if you want my opinion, picks up where the last one left, and it's a poor idea. What's the main purpose of it? If there is an Armenian in diaspora with several million in the account, let him come over and set up a factory. Let's look at this way. When we look at the history of capitalism, the reason I'm smiling, sorry, apologize for interrupting. Yes, they were coming. Yes, they were intending to set up those factories. And then corruption began and some people fell prey to it. Yes, even in the most ideal scenario, I think doesn't make sense to bring this to Armenia. We're no longer in the 19th century. Capitalism today has a lot of disposable funding. There is no lack of funds in the world today. If someone rich from Armenia come and deposits in a Swiss bank, there will be no interest gained. They will have to pay interest. There's so much money. The world no longer needs money. So asking money from the diaspora in Armenia, when there's lots of capital in the world, there's something wrong with it. Armenia should request from the diaspora problem solving. In order for us to resolve those problems, Armenia should pin down those problems. Define 1, 2, 3, these are the problems. Listen, diaspora, can you help me with these? And how are you intending to do that? In order to arrive there, Armenia and diaspora must become partners. So far, Armenia and diaspora have not been partners. We could talk about this more. Why Armenia and diaspora have not become partners over these 30 years of independence? The brilliant example of that is Nubar Afeyan. When we were talking, he said that the diaspora doesn't have a social compact with the Armenian state. Most probably that boiled down to the same thing. Yes, I would like to emphasize that it's not the problem of Armenia's public policy only. I believe it's a broader issue. It's a social problem. It's a matter of culture. The structures and institutions in Armenia are extremely conservative. It's not only the state. If you look at the state, at least with the last 4 leaders of Armenia since independence, everyone developed a different policy. They all resulted in the same outcome. Like you said, Mark, they did their best, and apparently it was the same old story, give us more money. I believe the problem is in the Armenian structures and institutions being conservative. You mentioned Nubar Afeyan. Nubar Afeyan is the kind of person who has been coming to Armenia year on year. He spends his time, efforts, his monies in Armenia. No one ever approached him in Armenia saying, "Dear Nubar, bro, you're an academic. You are an startup entrepreneurs. Let's set up a vaccine production in Armenia." Armenia has big problems in public health, but it also has great potential. Nubar can do that. Why didn't we think of it? What was lacking? I can say maybe they approached him or wrote to him. Maybe something was really lacking. So something other than just approaching him. Well, there should be production. 30 years of Armenia's independence. There are people like Nubar in the diaspora who are well known and have a global reputation. There are many such people out there. They could have resolved specific problems in Armenia, having made Armenia's economy state of the art. There are 2 issues that I see here. We more or less understand why that does not happen, because the Armenia's institutions are conservative, like you said. They're lenient, they respond with difficulty to challenges. But there's another reason. Why should the diaspora take care of Armenia if the same issue could be resolved through other means with better results? I don't believe that we could have another center other than Armenia. If we are the network, international network I refer to, the only place, the only nodule which could be the hub for this network is Yerevan. It's not Vartenis, it's not Cairo, it's not Beirut, it's not LA, it's Yerevan. There is no other choice. And if Yerevan fails to play this role, we cannot activate, galvanize this network. It's collecting rust now. It's emaciating. It's getting impoverished, this network, as we speak. If in Yerevan we have leaders, maybe leader is not the right word. The Armenian word for it is the helpsman, someone who leads. The one at the helm. The others are sitting behind. When I say leader, I imply manager. We need in Yerevan 1, 2, 5, 10 people who would be able to lead, manage this network. They should go behind the network, not in front of it. We need people who would be able to do this social engineering. If someone's sitting out there in Sydney today and this person needs an Armenian, he wants to buy diamonds from South Africa, have them cut and polished in Belgium and sell them in LA, this should be channeled through Yerevan, because we can have a person in Yerevan who knows the Belgian Armenians, he knows the other Armenians who are doing business with South Africa, and can arrange for all of that. And thus, not only Yerevan will take advantage of it, this Armenian, Sydney Armenian, Belgian Armenian, South African Armenian, LA Armenian will all win. It would be a win-win situation. Through this, we can collaborate. This is somewhat similar to the Jewish global network, what you described. it's similar to the Armenian diaspora. It's been working like that 100 years ago. We succeeded in the 19th century because a Persian Armenian sitting in Isfahan had a huge network all the way stretching to Manila. He worked with an Armenian in Tbilisi, in Constantinople. He gave money to the Venice Mkhitarists to found the Murad Rafaelian College. This network did deliver. We did have it. The Soviet Union, did the Soviet Union disrupt this network, or there were other reasons as well? The Soviet Union did that for granted. Maybe there were other reasons as well. There were a number of reasons. The genocide, of course, decapitated us. Why do we commemorate April 24? Because in Constantinople on April 24, all of the in all Armenian cities in Ottoman Empire, they decapitated the Armenian intellectuals. That broke our spine. Then there came the Soviet experience, which also decapitated us. 37, of course, 37, 38, before and after. And then there is this last 30 years Armenia-centric political thinking. I believe that within this last 30 years, like Armenia has been thinking about the diaspora, and the diaspora was thinking about itself. As a result, today we do not have a single center, neither Yerevan nor in the diaspora, that would be doing diaspora studies. Most recently, the Gulbenkian Foundation launched such a project, but that was only recently. We haven't done anything along those lines for 30 years. By recognizing the diaspora, we could then take advantage of it and hone it as an instrument, make it a very effective instrument. Incidentally, considering the political crisis in Armenia is in a deep political crisis as we speak. They started thinking about pan-Armenian governance structure, an institution or a body that would be representative of the global Armenians, a group that could be leading Armenians and Armenia. Does it not sound similar to the idea of a nation state, or is this Armenians of all countries unite, a slogan that Armenians should think alike because they're all Armenian? I do not believe that one single structure can carry this burden. Neither could Armenians unite. Uniting is not the best case scenario. Our wealth is our diversity. If an Armenian is not left, right, liberal, conservative, cosmopolitan, is that person not Armenian? Is he less Armenian than others? I believe that any political phenomenon, social phenomenon, comes with diversity. If we fail to understand and grasp this diversity and use it to the benefit of Armenia's development and to the benefit of diaspora's development, we will remain where we are. You know what? Today, social constructs have become very sophisticated, and we cannot think about Armenia diaspora relations if we oversimplify the approach and think that two is more than one. We need multi-stratum, complex, sophisticated structures in order both to understand and to galvanize the diaspora using its potential to everybody's benefit. Let's talk a little about today's realities from the following vantage point. In the Second Artsakh War, Armenia lost. This is a lamentable fact. What about the diaspora? So did the diaspora. If we look at the diaspora struggle of the last 30 years, The classical idea of diaspora, which hinged on the recognition of the genocide, was augmented by two more objectives: Armenia's development and the resolution and supporting the Artsakh issue. Today, we lost not only in Karabakh, we lost also in Armenia's development. The work towards Armenia's development over these 30 years did not yield the results that we were expecting. I believe that not only Armenia has lost, but also the Armenian diaspora. If we want to understand the mistakes of the past, we should not only look at it critically, look at the political projects in Armenia, but also reevaluate the diaspora. There were possibilities to develop other policies in the diaspora which never materialized. Why? Let's look ahead. This is a current issue for Armenia. The Armenian political thought in our thinking in Armenia today lamentably still lingers around the issue: who was the traitor and who out traitored whom. So the average Armenian political thinking also is in need of great strides. New strides, new mindset is a deeper one is asked for. I have another question, which I also believe is related to today's Armenia diaspora relations. By the early 20th century, the Armenians were living with the Turks, with the Russians, with the Georgians, with Muslims, with Shia, with Sunni Muslims, but there was no issue of preserving the Armenian identity then. Whereas now we are afraid of losing our identity. What is it that we're afraid from? What did happen in the meantime? I believe that there is no reason to fear. The 19th century Armenians in the Ottoman Empire were in much graver conditions. They had much tougher challenges to face than the Armenians that live in Moscow suburbs today or in Glendale, for that matter. Our problem is that we failed within these last 30 years to understand that the Armenian diaspora has undergone a great shift. The Armenian diaspora, beginning with the 50s, came out of the Middle Eastern post-Ottoman countries, came out of Egypt, Syria, Lebanon, Greece, and elsewhere, Iraq, Iran, and they moved to the West. This was not bad in and of itself. They went to more affluent countries. Their kids received university education, but we failed to give them the structures that we had in the Middle East. These structures were not recreated in the West. The Armenians in the Ottoman Empire, in Lebanon, in Egypt, they remained Armenians not because they were different from Arabs, Turks, or Persians, but because they had dozens, hundreds of schools, newspapers, cultural centers, churches, clubs, athletic clubs. I went to an Armenian school in Beirut. After school, I frequented an Armenian athletic club. I played basket there. And the evenings we partied in the Armenian club. We read Armenian newspapers, 3, 4, half a dozen newspapers in Beirut. There were 2 literary magazines, not 1, but 2. There is an Armenian university, Hamazgain University in Beirut. And if we fail to create such structures in the West, in America, in France, there were only 6 schools in France. There were 52 in Beirut. Spain, Ukraine, you name it. We will not have structures to host people who moved from Aleppo to Toronto. They will not have any opportunity to preserve their Armenianness and to hand it over to the next generation. Thank you. We have several questions from the audience, and of course, I shall ask them. We more or less touched upon it already. Give or take, what's your idea of practical steps to bring all Armenians in the world together? I do not believe that we need to unite them. We need to create conditions for Armenians who would want so elsewhere in the world to keep their language, their culture, their identity, to enjoy this. We have very little of such infrastructure, and wherever there is, the quality leaves a lot to desire. I have friends in Beirut who say, here's our choice. Either my kids have to be sent to an inferior school to get inferior education but remain Armenian, or I should give them good education, send them to a good school. So we have to upgrade our schools to such a level, have our newspapers of such a high quality for our next generation young people to be able to get interested in Armenian media, culture, literature. If we offer them inferior Armenian culture, only teach them to wave the flags, most of the next generation, the most exciting part of this generation, will keep away from Armenian culture, waving flags and listening to Rabbi's music. The next question, to what extent one should expect this, to what extent this ceasefire was expected in Artsakh, and what's next? I do not want now to dig deep into analysis of Artsakh. That was the topic of today. But using this opportunity, let me tell you the following. Every Armenian I know in the diaspora over these 44 days were experiencing physical and emotional pain. I saw here great excitement. People who were keeping a distance from the Armenian community. Thousands of such people came and said, what can we do to be of use? All we lack is the network that would utilize the potential of such people. This is the direction we have to think in. Whatever we do in the diaspora, whether it's lobbying effort, whether it's the Armenian cause and the struggle for it, claiming that the Artsakh issue should be defended and paid more attention to, we failed in that. The means we had to work along these lines were insufficient. We have to review the structures in the diaspora, and we have to develop those structures. If in Yerevan, in Armenia, you want the diaspora to be able to be of use, the diaspora has to develop. The diaspora has to become stronger. The diaspora institutions, the newspapers must become very professional. The schools, the clubs, the cultural structures. If we want the Armenian cause, the Artsakh issue to be raised in Western or Eastern Russian or the Arab media, we need to have journalists that can speak the same language with this audience, using their mindset, semantics, and explain them the Artsakh issue, not using our lexicon, not claiming that Karabakh is ours. They don't care. If we just tell them Artsakh is ours, they said, okay, it's yours. But we have to explain to them the Karabakh issue in such a way as for them to understand it, to make it their problem. Yes. The next question, is it at all possible to have a successful foreign policy without strong economy and army to back it? Difficult question. Of course, no. If you have a strong army and strong economy, your diplomacy is stronger. Naturally, that comes without saying. I still believe that Armenia's diplomacy should be reviewed in particular. When the war broke out, Azeri diplomacy succeeded to pull towards it into the war Turkey. It succeeded in getting Syrian Islamist groups over and using them. When Armenia failed to pull towards it Russia and Iran. Iran, yes. I forgot to say that Azerbaijan also succeeded to bring Israel over. Everything else aside, had we even had the most ideal army in this setup, the equilibrium was broken. The Azeri diplomacy, Azeri strategic thinking succeeded. And in the same front line, the Armenian equivalents failed. If you want to talk about the Artsakh history, that's what we should start with rather than looking for traitors or treason. How come that Azerbaijan succeeded to have Turkey, Syrian groups, Israel at its side, whereas we were out there on our own? And perhaps the last question, do you see any possibility? The reason I'm stuttering because I'm translating in my mind. Do you see any possibility to return to Armenia and Artsakh their lands? I think that we need to review this question. We should not ask for lands. We should look at the security of Armenians in Karabakh and Armenia. We should bring a person to the center of our mindset, not land. I'm talking to you from Geneva. I live in Geneva. It's not the land that matters here. It's the idea of Armenianness that matters. The Armenian person should become the focus of our attention. We should do everything in our power in order for Armenians in Artsakh to be secure, to be calm, to return to their land and build plans for future there and be confident that their children will be under their care and protection rather than doing everything in order to get them somewhere secure. We need to think about security of Artsakh. Everything else is secondary to that. Thank you. We have one more question, but I think we already touched upon it. Let me just read it out. What steps do we need in order for the diaspora to more actively participate in the restoration of Armenia's independence and rebuilding Armenia? I think that throughout this conversation, most of it evolved around the answer to this question. So hereby, I would like to conclude our talk and reiterate that we had a meeting with the professor of Université de Genève and the Webster University, History and International Relations professor, journalist and analyst Vicken Cheterian. Thank you, Vicken. Thank you, Mark. See you.